Okay, welcome everyone. Hopefully I thank you so much for your patience. Patience is a delight of mine working with the public and working with technology all the time. So my name is Allie Fry. I work as the programming librarian at the Watertown Free Public Library. And before we get to our guest of honor tonight, I just have a few things to share. We want to express gratitude for everybody who has helped pull off our One Book, One Watertown. And we want to cover a couple of items that will help tonight's event go smoothly, hopefully. Thank you so much to the Watertown Free Public Library Building Committee for making One Book, One Watertown possible. If you've ever purchased library merchandise from us or shopped the secondhand book sale in the library cafe, you're supporting our building committee. Those funds support our free library programming for all, so thank you also to our patrons like you. Thank you to all our library staff from our reference team who takes care to read and select titles for this program. Thank you to our circulation staff who ensures that books get back on the shelves as quickly as they fly off of them. If you've had trouble getting a copy of the Book of Delights for the past 3 months, we understand it's been in high demand. Thank you so much to Christine and Claudia, who are in our circulation department, for another year of gorgeous artwork in our display case closest to Main Street, and for Janet for coordinating our English language learning students to translate the phrase incite delight into their first languages for the display. Thank you to everyone in our community who chose to read the book, participated in a program, or plan to still participate in programs throughout the month of March. There's still more delight to be had. Our plan for this evening is to welcome Ross Gay. He'll read for us, and after some remarks, we'll have ample time to chat with him. If you're joining from Zoom, please feel welcome to type your questions and comments into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or in the chat. If you're joining from the library with Liz, please feel welcome to ask your question on camera with Liz. She'll indicate to me that there's someone who wants to ask a question, or Liz can type your question into the chat on your behalf. Without further ado, tonight we're joined by Ross Gay. Ross Gay is interested in joy. Ross Gay wants to understand joy. Ross Gay is curious about joy. Ross Gay studies joy. Something like that. Ross Gay is the author of 4 books of poetry: Against Which, Bringing the Shovel Down, Beholding, winner of the PEN America Literary Gene Stein Award, and Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, winner of the 2015 National Books Critics Circle Award and the 2016 Kingsley Tufts Poetry Award. In addition to his poetry, Ross has 3 collections of essays: The Book of Delights, which was released in 2019 and was a New York Times bestseller, Inciting Joy, and The Book of More Delights. Ross, please take it away.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you. Yeah, it sounds like such a beautiful library and everything. And I just want to say how much I appreciate and adore libraries. I was somewhere at a library recently and they just said, it's like one of the places in a town where everything is to be borrowed. Everything is, kind of free to share. And I think that's precious. It's just like so deeply precious and to be loved and celebrated. So anyway, I feel grateful. So thank you. And it's cool that you all are reading this book too. For those of you who haven't read it, I thought I would just read the preface, which is real brief, which it kind of explains why I came to write the book or how I came to write the book. And then I imagine there might be other questions sort of around that, but I'll just read that and then I'll read 3 essays and then maybe we'll have a conversation. Preface. One day last July, feeling delighted and compelled to both wonder about and share that delight, I decided that it might feel nice, even useful, to write a daily essay about something delightful. I remember laughing to myself for how obvious it was. I could call it something like the Book of Delights. I came up with a handful of rules. Write a delight every day for a year, begin and end on my birthday, August 1st, draft them quickly, and write them by hand. The rules made it a discipline for me, a practice. Spend time thinking about and writing about delight every day. Because I was writing these essayettes pretty much daily, confession, I skipped some days. Patterns and themes and concerns show up. For instance, I traveled quite a bit this year. I often write in cafes. My mother is often on my mind. Racism is often on my mind. Kindness is often on my mind. Politics, pop music, books, dreams, public space. My garden is often on my mind. It didn't take me long to learn that the discipline or practice of writing these essays occasioned a kind of delight radar. Or maybe it was more like the development of a delight muscle, something that implies that the more you study delight, the more delight there is to study. A month or two into this project, delights were calling to me, write about me, write about me. Because it is rude not to acknowledge your delights, I'd tell them that though they might not become essays, they were still important to me, and I was grateful to them. Which is to say, I felt my life to be more full of delight, not without sorrow or fear or pain or loss, but more full of delight. I also learned this year that my delight grows, much like love and joy, when I share it. So that's the preface. And then the titles are things like blowing it off, or inefficiency, or remission still, etc. This one's called The High Five from Strangers. Today, I was wandering the square of the small Indiana town where I gave a poetry reading at the local college. A feature of the small town Midwest, a city hallish building in the center, always with some sad statue trumpeting one war or another. This one had a guy in one of those not very protective looking hats they called a helmet during World War I. He's carrying, naturally, a gun. Jenna Osman's book, Public Figures, alerted me to the ubiquity of the gun, the weapon in the hands of our statues. A delight I wish to now imagine and even impose, given that beneficent dictatorship, of one's own life anyway, is a delight. All new statues must have in their hands flowers, or shovels, or babies, or seedlings, or chinchillas, or whatever. We could go on like this for a while. But never again, never ever guns. I decree it, and also decree the removal of the already extant guns. Let the emptiness our war heroes carry be the metaphor for a while. As I was finishing circling square, I passed a storefront garage with huge Make America Great Again signs. It was a foreign auto repair shop, and inside were mostly Toyotas and Hondas. I settled in the coffee shop, took my notebooks out, and I was reading over these delights, transcribing them into my computer. And while I was working, my headphones on, swaying to the new De La Soul record, Delight, which deserves its own entry, I noticed a white girl. She looked 15, but she could have been, I suppose, a college student, standing next to me with her hand raised. I looked up, confused, and pulled my headphones back. And she said, like a coach or something, working on your paper? Good job to you. High five. And you better believe I high-fived that child in her pre-ripped Doc Martens shirt and her itty-bitty Doc Martens. For I delight in unequivocally pleasant public physical interactions with strangers. What constitutes pleasant, it's no secret, is informed by my large-ish male and cisgender body, a body that is also large-ish male, cisgender, and not white. In other words, the pleasant, the delightful are not universal. We should all understand this by now. A few months ago, walking down the street in Umbertide, in Italy, a trash truck pulled up beside me, and the guy in the passenger seat yelled something I didn't understand. I said, "Como?" The Spanish word for come again, which is a ridiculous thing to say because even if he had come again, I would not have understood him. He knew this, and hopping out of the truck to dump it a couple cans, he flexed his muscles, pointed at me, and smacked my biceps hard. Twice. I loved him. Or when a waitress puts her hand on my shoulder, forget it if she calls me honey, baby even better. Or someone scooting by puts their hand on my back, the handshake, the hug, I love them all. Once I was getting on a plane and shuffling down the aisle, I saw sitting at the front of coach, reading a magazine, my great Uncle Earl. I got down on my knees and I put my hand on his forearm and I said, Uncle Earl, it's me, Ross. He looked at me kind of quizzically, as did the woman traveling with him, who did not look one bit like my Aunt Sylvia, which made me look back at my not Uncle Earl, who looked maybe like my Uncle Earl's second cousin 20 years ago. And though it was benign and no one was hurt, it was a little weird, and they looked confused. All the same, given as Uncle Earl died about 6 months later, I'm delighted I got to see him and touch him gently, lovingly, about 1,000 miles away. And this one, I have to say, today I was getting coffee with a student and talking about their thesis. And so two people came up and someone opened the door, and the guy thought it was funny that I waited for them to get up and open the door so I could have the door open for me. And he was laughing and he smacked me on the back like we were suddenly friends immediately, It was the sweetest thing ever. And I was thinking, oh yeah, I love that. This is called Tomato on Board. What you don't know until you carry a tomato seedling through the airport and onto a plane is that carrying a tomato seedling through the airport and onto a plane will make people smile at you almost like you're carrying a baby, a quiet baby. I did not know this until today, carrying my little tomato, about 3 or 4 inches high in its 4-inch plastic starter pot, which my friend Michael gave to me, smirking about how I was going to get it home. Something about this at first felt naughty. Not comparing a tomato to a baby, but carrying the tomato onto the plane. And so I slid the tomato into my bag while going through security, which made them pull the bag for inspection. When the security guy saw it was a tomato, he smiled and said, I don't know how to check that. Have a good day. But I quickly realized that that one of its stems, which I almost wrote as arms, was broken from the jostling, and it only had 4 of them. So I decided I better just carry it out in the open, and the shower of love began. It was a shower of love I also felt while carrying a bouquet of lilies through the street of Rome last summer. People, maybe women especially, maybe women my age-ish and older especially, smiling with approval. A woman in a house dress beating out a rag on a balcony shouted, Bravo! An older couple holding hands both smiled at me and pulled into each other, knitting their fingers together. My showers might have been disappointed to know I was not giving the lilies to a sweetheart, but to my friends Damiano and Moira, who had translated a few of my poems into Italian and were so kind as to let me stay at their place a couple nights when I was passing through. On the way to the vegetarian restaurant Damiano's ex-wife owns with her partner, we walked by what I'm pretty sure Damiano said was the biggest redbud tree in the world. It stretched for yards, lounging periodically onto the mossy earth. Its beautiful black bark glistened by the streetlights. Though translation is an act of love, so my showers needn't be disappointed at all. Before boarding the final leg of my flight, one of the workers said, Nice tomato, which I don't think was a come on. And the flight attendant asked about the tomato at least 5 times, not exaggeration, every time calling it my tomato. Where's my tomato? How's my tomato? You didn't lose my tomato, did you? She even directed me to an open seat in the exit row. Why don't you guys go sit there and stretch out? I gathered my things and set the little guy in the window seat so she could look out. When I got my water, I poured some into the little guy's soil. When we got bumpy, I put my hand on the little guy's container, careful not to snap another arm off. And when we landed and the pilots put the brakes on hard, my arm reflexively went across the seat, holding the little guy in place, the way my dad's arm would when he had to brake hard in that car without seatbelts to speak of, in one of my very favorite gestures in the Encyclopedia of Human Gestures. Thank you. And this last one I'm going to read is called Cocoa Baby. And I reference a couple other writers in here, a writer named Simone White, whose work I adore, and a writer named Toy Derricotte, whose work I also love. And she's the author of a beautiful memoir prose book called The Black Notebooks. But she's one of our great poets as well. And I reference a line in one of her poems in here. Anyway, it's called Cocoa Baby. I caught sight of myself this morning in the mirror applying coconut oil to my body. I was bent over with one foot on the edge of the tub, rubbing the oil into my calves, which have become a particularly ashen part of my body, particularly visibly ashen, as it's summer, which I'm trying to address with a loofah and the oil, abundantly applied. If you want to get way further into this, and I think you do, I recommend Simone White's book, essay, Lotion, and her book of Being Dispersed. This time of year, I am mostly brown, except for a stretch from my mid-waist to my mid-thighs, which is a lighter shade, neither of them to be compared to a food or coffee drink. With my leg up like this, bent over, my testicles swaying just beneath my pale thigh, I wondered if, whenever I'm in this position, which is often, oiling, cutting toenails, I will always think of Toy Derricotte's poem in The Undertaker's Daughter, where as a child she walks in on her abusive father standing more or less just like this, though he's shaving. Seeing his testicles dangling like that, she thinks they are his udders, the, quote, female part he hid, something soft and unprotected I shouldn't see, end quote. I watched myself rub the oil liberally on my body while I was still wet, which my dear friend recently taught me keeps some of the moisture in. I got my calves, then my feet, lacing my fingers into my toes. When doing this, I often recall another friend who, watching me put lotion on my feet one day, smiled and said, "Good job." Up to my thighs, inner and outer, around to my ass, which seems to want to break out some when I'm sitting too much. Then I get both arms and shoulders, my chest and stomach, what I can reach of my back. Usually I oil my face with the residual oil on my hands, and I finish by oiling my penis. Not always last, but often, which I wouldn't read too much into, one way or the other. Today, when I watched myself, particularly when I was oiling my chest and stomach, which I do kind of by self-hugging, I was thinking how many bodies of mine are in this body. This nearly 43-year-old body, stationed on this plane for the briefest. I could see, as I always can, probably kind of dysmorphically, my biggest body, when it was 260 pounds and a battering ram and felt sort of impervious. I could also see my 12-year-old self, chubby and gangly and ashamed. And of course, the baby me, who I don't remember being, though I have seen pictures. When you watch yourself in the mirror oiling yourself, like this, wrapping your arms around yourself and jostling yourself a little, it is easy or easier to see yourself as a child, and maybe even a child you really love. It is easy, if you decide it, which might be hard, to let the oiling be of the baby you. Or at least I thought so today, looking at myself, whom I am so often not nice to. But the baby you oil until he shines. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ross. I want to kick off our conversation with a couple questions here. And I want to encourage our audience. It's so exciting to get to hear you reading these essays we've been spending some time with.
Yeah.
For our audience, since January, for our library, we pick this book. We choose our one book in the summertime. So it's hard to predict the future when we're just trying to pick the right title for our community in the summer. And so I just want to encourage our audience members, let me stay focused, encourage our audience members to put some questions in the Q&A box and in the chat. And I'll get us started with some questions to get the ball rolling here. while people take some time to think what they might want to chat with you about. So like I mentioned, we get this process started in the summertime and we take it seriously. We want to pick something really quality for our community and we want to pick something relevant. It's a hard task and we can't predict the future, but there's something that this book really feels like both really timely and also kind of timeless, this invitation to study delight. And it's made us, particularly at the library, slow down and think about the delights we get to see every day. And we see that kind of uh, tenderness and human connection all the time in public space. Doesn't mean we don't see some of the negative side of public space, but we get to see a lot of the tenderness all the time. And so some of those things for some examples, we are neighbors to the Perkins School for the Blind and the Perkins Library, which is filled with amazing resources, and they're an incredible neighbor and partner to us. And they have a student who drops off a bouquet of flowers almost every week for our service desks.
Yeah.
Total delight, total
Yes,
delight.
it
We
is.
get flowers every week.
It's great.
And I think about your statement about the statues. Imagining we have lots of statues all over Boston, but I think about those flowers and replacing some of those statues with what's in the bouquet. So it's prompted me to not just think about delight in the present, but delight of the future. What could the future look like? What are the possibilities? Total delight. I also want to share, I think and I'm going to just be selfish for your, to show you, but also for folks who haven't had the chance yet to see this, is in our library, we've taken the time with our staff, but also, ooh, come on, we can do it. Here we go. This is one of our staff members here on the right side, Claudia. She's a visual artist, and I think I'm going to fail on the left side was a video, but we have a glass stairwell, and she spent most of this month drawing delights that patrons and our staff suggested. Some that are in the book. We have a praying mantis. We have someone being tapped on the shoulder. Coffee, other common delights, basketball, skateboarding, plants, tomato plant. But she spent a lot of the month hand drawing those delights all along this glass stairwell, as we reflected on some of those delights. So total delight all month that we've been thinking about, and I'll figure out how to escape from here in my room. But while I'm doing that, I just wanted to ask probably your most frequently asked question, but why delight? What got you started and what keeps you going? Because we know that a lot of us feel miserable acutely sometimes, sometimes more often than not. But what keeps you studying delight and focusing on it in your poems and your essays and your writing? Why stay there? What got you started and why stay there?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I think, well, the way it started, I mean, really, I was just like having a nice day. Or I was in like a nice moment. And I was like, oh, this is such a nice moment. And I thought, let me write a little essay about this. Like, I'll write an essay about this and then I can, I don't know. That's what I do. I write about stuff. And, but it was immediate. It was like immediate. Something, I do feel very much like it was given to me. Like it wasn't like my idea. It feels very much like it was given to me. Um, I like to say like a bird flew in my ear or something, or a sunflower, boom, popped in my, because I wasn't actually walking next to a field of sunflowers and stuff. And it occurred to me like, or it was given to me that, oh, maybe you should do that every day for a year. Write about something that delights you every day for a year. Which is not like a thing that I would do. It's not my writerly daily stuff. It's not how I do it. So I had to decide how I would actually make that happen and do it. And like I said in the preface, I decided to start a couple weeks after that day, which was my birthday. And I decided to write them very quickly, 30 minutes a day. Quickly for me, I'm a writer, it's my job. And partly the reason for doing that is a writerly reason, and that was to like not intimidate myself with the need to make something beautiful. It was like you're just doing 30-minute reflections or something, meditations. Um, and it was a way to, so it was a way to keep myself from not doing it. But the thing that happened quickly, and I say that in the introduction too, the more I sort of tuned myself to that, the more I noticed, oh, there's several things a day that I could be writing about. And often they're these minute world-making events, like the dude laughing and holding the door for me and patting me on the back. And I feel like, oh man, I love this dude, just like that. Um, the reason I keep doing it, I mean, there's a couple things I think. One is that, and to sort of address maybe some of your questions, um, one of the things I think this practice does for me, this noticing delight, as you heard from those essays, but also from so many of the other essays in this book, and then I have a follow-up book called The Book of More Delights. It did occur to me, like maybe halfway through the writing of the book, that so often what constituted a delight for me was some interaction or some moment of care or some sweetness between people or some evidence of connection. The connection might be between people, the connection might be between, a human and a bird or something like that. Um, but ultimately, I think these things, sometimes I'm inclined to like figure out definitions for these things. And it feels just to me that delight is sort of the sweet evidence of our connection. That might be a definition of it. The sweet evidence of our connection. So, when you're walking down the street and you see a bird perched on some dude's shoulder, and this dude is like, kind of singing and feeding this bird. It's like, whoa, there's some suture between all of us, the dude, the bird, me, even though it's sort of just passing by. And that those are everywhere, that it's constant if you can tune into that. The next thing is that what is the name of that connection? Well, that connection might be called something like life. It might be like, oh yeah, delight might be the sweet evidence of our being life. And the practice of delight might be the attempt to belong to life or to behave as though we are being life, which I think, obviously we are often disinclined to do or disinclined from doing, discouraged from doing. So, and then to come a little bit more to make that point a little bit stronger, it's so often the thing that, well, I sort of feel like there's a kind of concerted effort, whether that be many things, a certain kind of um, brutal capitalistic mode of life, which would make all libraries private, you know, um, or a brutal mode of like um, other kinds of things that would do anything to keep us from understanding that we are in fact connected. That would do anything to keep us from believing that not only are you and I connected as people, but like that we're connected to the tree out there and the birds singing on the tree and the dandelions and the neighbor walking down the street and the cat who's like under the pear tree and the blah, blah, and going on and on and on. It feels like that's one of the things that um like I don't like to imagine myself as kind of antagonistic, like fighting, resisting. That's not what I'm thinking about. I'm sort of actually thinking about aggressing or something. I'm thinking about like action, and one of the actions that feels like devastating to a brutal mode of life is practicing our connection to one another or practicing our connection as life, practicing our entanglement. That feels, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. And it's why they criminalize speech, you know? It's why. It's why if you protest genocide, you're a criminal. Because that's life. People asking about life, caring for life. So in a way, it's just like one of the many ways that we practice being life. Um, Delight feels tied into that, you know. It also, you got me going on a long thing.
I'm really glad you got there because there's so many. I'm gonna toss it over to our audience real quick, but I just want
Yeah.
to say thank you because this is really generous of you. And my other question that I had for you was right about that because I love one of my favorite essays in this collection is loitering, number
Mm,
number 87, I believe.
yeah.
I've got my notes, and I that it was the delight offering this resistance to an
Yeah.
oppressive structure. But I was saying to people, I was like, I want to say the right thing because you're a poet, you're a man of words. I want to say the right thing, and I don't want to say resist because that's not what Ross is about. He's
Mhm.
building something. We're
Yeah.
making something. But I like we're aggressing.
Yeah.
We're we're
Yeah.
we're building something. We're building
Yeah.
this something more beautiful. And I think it speaks to me that essay resonates and why I feel really happy about this book as our one
Mm,
book is because it speaks to I hope to the ethos of the public library right now of like you're welcome to loiter here and we
mm,
you will always loiter here and
yes.
and loiter in a really expansive term of what's criminal in a lot of other places is like we really hope you'll do that here. We hope you will
Totally.
loiter. We hope you will dilly dally. We hope you will like be silly. We hope you will meet your neighbor. We hope you will slow down and take time and be a human and connect with your humanity and realize that literature and the arts and speaking up and all those things are really really fundamental to our humanity all the time
Yes.
and I just that was a really generous answer and it touched on other things I wanted to talk to you about but this isn't about me. I want to share the space because this is a community read. It isn't an alley read. So let me get to some of the other things that people want to say because they have great questions too for you. So thank you. Um, we wanted to, let's see, so there's so many comments that people really, really enjoy your work. And um, somebody wants to ask you about more delights. How is your second book of delights different than the one you've shared with us tonight? What could we expect from that? Can you tease?
Yeah, I mean, one thing it's a book about, to some extent, it's about aging. It's about, because it's 5 years later. So it's very interesting. To me, it's like people, in the course of that book, people have died, you know, or of course, or, people have gotten older, myself included. And the book became quite a bit about that, without me intending that at all. It's also in some ways, I'm always interested when people say, "Oh, I like it even more than the first book," because it feels like a tougher book in a way. It's more overtly political. I'd say it's more sort of full of rage in a way, you know. And in a way, it's sort of like that book and another book that I wrote kind of in the interim called Inciting Joy are these places where some of this like thinking hard about entanglement, thinking hard about our connection to one another, thinking about hard about the kind of machinery that wishes to interrupt or destroy that connection or will do anything to destroy it. That's in that second Delights book in a way that I don't think it is in this first book. This first book, I think, is also extremely grave because I think like joy, delight is kind of a grave thing because if you're being serious about what tickles you, to be tickled is sort of like it's a bodily expression. The reason, it's the reason that we know that to be tickled is bodily. And if you have a body, you're going to die. So there's a gravity to the capacity to be tickled, because at some point you will not. Or or even when you're being tickled, other people are not or may no longer have a body. And that book is like full of like, beloveds struggling, someone very, I think beautifully read it. Because sometimes people just want to be delighted, you know? I get it. Like, oh, the Book of Delights, man, this is just gonna be delightful. And I think it's easy in a way to kind of read that book. I don't think it's easy. I think you have to actually have a kind of discipline to read that book without noticing how grave it is. Um, but someone I remember in one of these things was like, yeah, in the first 10 essays, like you talk about your buddy with leukemia, you talk about like medical racism, you talk about your dad who died, and you talk about, and I was like, okay, you get it. Like in a way, it's sort of like the practice. What feels interesting to me is when in the midst of our lives, which are full and complicated, and among other things, we are dying and who we love is dying. To also be like, yeah, man, there's that bird is so small making that loud ass song. Like, what is the deal? You know? Yeah.
think this kind of, I think you've answered this a bit, but if you'd like to expand on it any more, but um, you've talked a bit about this, but how does sadness inform joy then? Like we can't have one without the other. You're kind of doing this, I think it's that entanglement piece,
Yeah.
correct? That's what
Yeah.
we kind of answered that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does feel like important to say it again. And I think, you know, you like I feel like I read this from the Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron or her teacher Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche maybe, and other people too. But like that there's a kind of the thing beneath what so much of what we do is just sadness, you know, beneath there's sadness. And oh God, this student wrote it so beautifully. What did she say? It's something like our heartbreak makes us family, something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's about as true as it is.
It brings us back to that human to human connection.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a couple questions here about your writing process.
Hmm.
I have one from Ilana. Can you talk a little bit about process? How much editing of your longhand writing did you do for this book? Did you second guess yourself during the publishing process? And then kind of another part of that is just Kalia at the library would like to know what your daily writing routine is like. So
Mm.
two-fold question.
Yeah. I didn't I wasn't too worried about publishing it. So, you know, so I wrote them by hand, I wrote them quickly. And the most important thing I think about writing these essays was that I hadn't written actually a lot of essays before writing this book. I mean, I'd written a handful, or maybe like, you know, say I'd written 20 essays, you know, maybe more, I don't know, whatever. But I hadn't like written a book of essays. And I also hadn't written these things, like these timed things, and I didn't know what they were when I was writing them. It was very quick and all that stuff. And it did feel like I needed, like right away, I wanted to start revising them the way I revise my poems, which I know I kind of know how to do. And there's a kind of a certain kind of meticulousness and a certain kind of like compression that I would often at that point be going for in certain things. And I realized I was really messing up the essays. So it took me like, I had to wait for a month or a month and a half before I really went in and started revising them. And one of the ways that I learned how to revise them was by giving readings and hearing people respond to the work. Then I could kind of hear them a little bit better by hearing other people hear them, which is itself a kind of theory of connection. Um, but the other thing about publishing, I do think this is a funny story, and I'm going to tell it. You know, there's an essay in there about about like having had a dream in which I'd been fucking my mother for 2 years. Sorry for the language. But that's what it says in the book. And I'm just like, you know, in the dream, the person wakes up and was like, whoa, what's going on here? What are you doing? And you know, it's a good essay. It's really funny, you know, it really belongs in the book. And but you know, when the book came out, I sat down at my brother's house. My mom was like over there, like doing something, and I sat down at my brother's house, and I showed him the essay, and he's like, "Oh yeah, good essay. Oh, this is a galley. This wasn't the finished book. This is a galley." And he's like, "Yeah, it's a good essay," and I was like, and then he said, "Yeah, you got to cut it out of the book. Mom can't see this." So there's literally a page and a half, 2 pages just exactoed out of the book. Luckily, hopefully, my mother's not like watching these things, you know. But because she reads what I write, she reads what I write. So that's the issue. Anyway, that's just sort of like there is some like nuts and bolts a little bit like, okay, I'm gonna publish this, but I am gonna have to like rip these pages out for my mom. But otherwise, the things that make it to the point of publication, at that point, I'm pretty ready. I'm pretty sure about it, as far as I know.
There's always something with, I think for every writer, there's some line where their family can't find out about something.
Totally,
So that's an
totally.
interesting one because that essay did come up at some point where someone's like, "Did you read this one? Is that?"
Well, look, man, people look, so this is a public library thing that you all are doing, but I've gone places where that's been like an assigned book for a high school, 9 through
Yes.
12. And I'm like, it's really funny and fun, I gotta say. But the other thing I realized I didn't answer the other question about my daily
Your
routine.
daily routine. Thank you.
Yeah, when I'm writing those delights, I'm not a daily writer regularly. I write sort of in intense. I get real intense. I'm like going hard on an essay or a poem or something, and then I sort of spin off and try to find something else, or I'm reading or doing whatever. But so it's sort of like deep and then come out. But with those essays, it was very much 30 minutes a day, try to find the time. If I had a more open day, sometimes I would write 3 or 4, probably sometimes 5 little short essays. But otherwise, I'd kind of like be scoping out for the delight that I was going to write about, which was usually the thing that I didn't know why it delighted me. I kind of had to figure out like what it was. And yeah, and so the 30 minutes was like the kind of locked in thing, daily 30 minutes. And the revision thing, which I love to do the most, I love revising the most. That would come up and then take a lot of time kind of later after I'd written the essays.
Wonderful. Let's see, we've got, again, I think there's some connected questions here. Ray asks, do you specifically look for, so we kind of touched on this, but do you specifically look for delights to write about, or do they come to you naturally as you write? Are some days more difficult than others, particularly in a world that seems to be becoming more and more unkind?
Hmm.
And you did talk a little bit about the delight muscle in the
Yeah,
book. So I wonder where
yeah.
that kind of kicks in. You've got this kind of discipline going, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'm learning more and more about like what it is. Like for one, there's that delight muscle thing, which is that like if you kind of walk around, like if it is just your kind of practice, a practice which, by the way, I think is fun to do with other people, like this, what you all are doing, or, I hear about people who like start a little, like a delight walking group, like people get together and take a walk once a week or something and talk about delights, or Zoom groups that would, because the book kind of came out during lockdown stuff for COVID and shortly before that. So there would be people who were like getting on every day and Zooming and doing a delight thing. Beautiful to me, so lucky. Um, but there is that practicing it thing. But the other thing is like I'm writing a book now called Why I Garden. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that like I was just writing about the first seeds I put in like a few days ago and dandelion greens and broccoli rabe. Um, and I was just very closely describing the experience of putting the seeds in. And one, I was like, oh, isn't it funny? Um, Everything that we love has been shown to us. Someone told us, I mean, nearly, has been shown to us as something maybe to love. And I was thinking about broccoli rabe. The first time I had broccoli rabe, I'm pretty sure, was with my friend Phil's mother, Mrs. Romano, who was just like this incredible Italian cook, and like the sausage and meatballs and the beautiful sauce and the roasted peppers and oh my God. and Broccoli Rob was part of their thing. And so that was a thing that in the process of seeding these greens, I was like, oh yeah, these things which I'm growing because I love them were shown to me to be loved. The other thing I realize is that when I'm seeding greens and doing other things, I'm often thinking about other times that I have done such things. And one time I was remembering a kind of garden mentor of ours. He was kind of like laughed approvingly, and he was like, "Oh, you see like an old timer. You see like an old timer." And I was thinking about that as I was seeding this broccoli rabe, the seeds of which are tiny, they're invisible almost, you know. And I was thinking, oh, what does it mean to seed like an old timer? And so I was just describing very closely what I was doing, how I was using my body. And the first thing I noticed was that the kind of action, if you do it with your hands, is just an incredibly meticulous. I mean, it's just like what a tool our body is. What a tool. And that you kind of massage your forefinger and thumb to let the tiny things come out, seeds come out. That's amazing to me. But it also felt like, I mean, so there was that. Another thing, a kind of celebration of our body's proximity to the earth in the midst of, I would say, a system which wants to do everything to refute that. But the second thing is that I got to remember my buddy Mark, our teacher Mark, our friend Mark, who we love and who I hadn't thought of for a little bit, but who like made me, who kind of like gave me a thumbs up and was like, "Oh, you're doing it. You're doing it." You know?
Yeah. I want to touch on one of our questions here. That's somebody asked, "Who do you read? Who are your influences?" And I'm gonna hop in with a question I have for you also, because I love to ask writers who they read. I think if you're going to be a great writer, you have to be a great reader. And something I really like about your work is that you could really be a self-help writer if you wanted to, but it's not that. You're not
Mhm.
being preachy. It's really refreshing. It's
Mhm.
observational. It's compassionate work. It's not, you know, you're not out here Bible thumping for delight. You could. I would listen, but it's refreshing. So,
Yeah.
but that being said, so who tell us who you like to read if that is of interest. But also, I'd like to know if you were going to take life advice from the work of a writer or a poet, whose would you take, and whose would you steer clear from?
Oh
Who's
God.
you would take?
Oh Lord, great question. There's so many who I would take, versions of advice or some kind of advice from. Um, Great question. Let me answer the question a little bit about who I'm reading or who I read.
Easier version. You can
Yeah,
use
yeah, yeah. I mean, Montaigne, I guess is how you say it, almost right. It's French. Um, is a writer who I adore, essayist, old-timey essayist. I love the writer John Edgar Wideman. I love the writer Sarah Rules. Has a book called 100 Essays I Don't Have Time to Write that are really important to this book. Um, who else was I? There's a writer named Brian Blanchfield, whose work I love. Um, Someone named Brian Dillon, who I love. David Shields, Toy Darracott, I mentioned. Toy's someone I would take advice from her um, and her work as, that it's a great question. And I'm kind of like, huh, I wonder. But Toy's someone who I'd feel like, oh yeah. Toy. Terrence Hayes is a beautiful writer who I love. His poems, of course, he's sort of a well-known poet, but he has a beautiful book of nonfiction, two books, but there's one beautiful book of nonfiction that I just adore. There's a writer named Amy Leach. She's an essayist. Had a book come out recently. It's behind me. And she writes with such kind of like wonder and enthusiasm and curiosity and but like also with her mouth is so full of words. It's like the kind of bombast and play and pleasure of words. She's like a poet, you know. I love her essays. I was reading her essays recently. Um, there's so many others. You know, my friend Patrick Rosal is a writer who I adore, and he writes poems, but he also writes some weird nonfiction little vignette kind of things. He has a book called Atang, um, an altar for listening to the beginning of the world, and it's free. It's a PDF. He published it online. He's one of my favorite writers and thinkers. He's someone who, as a writer and thinker, I absolutely trust and listen to. Like, oh yeah, I'm getting profound wisdom. Another writer named Araceli Esquermay, someone who I feel the same way about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on and on. And on. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, we have, let's see, I'm trying to hit on as many themes and questions as we can squeeze in. Um, From Sam in the chat here. First, I want to say thank you for the webinar. I happened upon your first book of delights at a bookstore and was, shall I say, delighted when I read it. Thank you so much for doing this. Do you have any advice for people who want to try to follow noticing their own delights? Also, shout out to the bread and puppet poster in the back.
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally,
Already
totally.
noticing things and delights, it seems.
You know, I don't know. I feel like just it's like shooting foul shots. It is just sort of like reps, I think. You know, I just do it. But I do, you know, for me, like I like to write. Writing is one of the ways I think. Maybe it's how I think best, maybe. And writing and in conversation, I'd say. And I think um which is to say a dialogue with myself and a dialogue with other people. Um, I so writing helps me to sort of observe a thing that tickles me or delights me or whatever, and then to think more about it and kind of like have a fuller understanding of that maybe, and and pointed it out, like sort of like what we were saying earlier, like pointed it out and doing it with other people, you know, like kind of making pacts with other people to um, notice what we love. That feels like something. So the kind of socialness of it feels useful. But other than that, it's like, you know, shoot foul shots, like shoot 1,000 foul shots, you know.
Um, Another question. Thank you so much, Professor Gay, for sharing your time and your work with us. I bought your text for myself and my twin sister for our birthday just a few days ago. Happy belated birthday. After having heard you read via a podcast some time ago, we were both looking forward to relishing each page once her copy arrives.
Mm.
My question, based on your immersion and long-time meditation on the concept, is it possible that a delight is that, a delight or delightful, because it is something that emerges, occurs, or is felt without being pursued? Put alternatively, would a goal of seeking or creating delight make it something else and not a delight?
I know. I love that question. I love that question. It is sort of the question of being in the present. Like, is there a way that you you interrupt the experience by either yeah pursuing it or kind of like writing it down? I have an essay in the new book where I talk about seeing a squirrel like eating in a pumpkin. It was Halloween time, and there's like a squirrel's butt is hanging out of, and its tail is out of a pumpkin. And I get excited, and I'm like, oh, I'm watching for a while, and then I like reach behind to grab my notebook to write it, and then the squirrel like is like, I'm out of here, takes off. Um, because that's a really good question. But I also wonder, like on the level that most of us are kind of spiritually, cognitively, etc. I wonder, this is a total question. I have no idea. But and I'm sort of speaking for myself, that my brain is inclined, mind, whatever you call it, is inclined to rest on things periodically. Um, in habits, on habits. Habits might make my mind rest on things more and less, various ways. Whether that be like, the plants, what the flowers are doing, what the birds are doing, or what my breath is doing, or how someone was maybe rude to me in the store, and other people, or it's like I do wonder if there's something about the fact of the matter is that most of our minds are going to be resting on something regularly or seeking something to rest on. Again, like I don't know this at all. So does it make sense, in fact, to sort of, um, to some extent, guide one's mind toward what might make one feel more connected, you know? Um, yeah, it's a great question. I don't know how to answer it, but I wonder. I wonder. Yeah.
We have so many nice things. If we have a couple minutes, I just want to read a couple of messages. I think the other thing is, in terms of manufacturing delight, I'll just share that we had a question here about whether or not you stand by. I think you put the disclaimer out there a lot that delight doesn't have to be universal, and whether or not you've changed your mind on touch since the pandemic, if touch is still a delight. But I
Way
love
more, way more.
because we were deprived it. Liz, who you saw earlier, we're co-writing a book called The Book of Discuss, where we're turning our discuss into delights. We are looking for a co-author if you're interested. Like I mentioned, we're in public space all the time, and sometimes you
Yeah.
have to turn the discuss into delights.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What doesn't
Yeah.
make for a great time in the present can be a really great story later. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay, double down. We love touch.
Totally.
But we have I just want to thank everybody who came on. If we didn't get a chance to read, there's some really lovely thoughts. And just someone shared that she and her daughter were texting about the Book of Delights. And her daughter said that she loved reading the Book of Delights so much that uh, now she's on to inciting joy. And her mother
Uh,
interpreted that as she was going out into the world inciting joy. And oh no, that's the name of the next book. That's what I'm reading. But
yeah, yeah.
we're going to spread inciting joy, and I think that's a lovely note to end on. But we
Uh,
in Watertown, we're certainly committed to keep looking for delights, and we invite everyone, if you're in need of some delights, to please stop by the library where um, we at least we have Ross Gay's books to offer you. We have a seed library to offer you. We have quite a few things to offer you to hopefully inspire some delight if you're in need and in need of looking for that human entanglement. I think it can be found. It can be found here even on our most mediocre days. I think it's a pretty good space for that. So we hope you will drop by. But thank you all so much for sharing space and time with us with Ross. Ross, thank you so much for being
yeah,
our
totally.
wonderful
Thank you. It's
guide.
been so
Wow.
fun. And let me reiterate that like libraries, I mean, that's the thing. Like these places where we can gather, where we can all gather.
Yeah.
It is profound. It is not like that's us getting together, being in space together, being in spaces where we're thinking hard about how to care for each other, care for everyone. Really beautiful, really like, just some of the most important institutions we got. So I'm just like so grateful to you and want to, yay, hallelujah libraries.
Hallelujah Libraries. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Yeah. And we're on Zoom, so we could spiritually be in Indiana tonight with you.
Yeah.
We're
There
we're
you go.
gonna we're gonna keep the joy here in Watertown too. And
Awesome.
yeah, so everybody, we'll see you around the library. And Ross, next time you're around,
Oh yeah,
come through Watertown
I
because
will.
it's pretty hip. We're
I
pretty
will.
proud. Yeah.
I'll be there.
Thank
Cool.
you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody. Have a great night. The recording will be made available soon. That's all
Okay.
I can say. You saw my tech debacle earlier. Everybody, have a lovely night. Happy
Bye-bye.
woodwork.